Hello, everyone. I'm Ted Everingham, a proud alumnus of Albion College, class of 1961. It's my privilege to host another of these Briton conversations, a time to visit with an interesting graduate, reminisce a little about our time at the college. And today we welcome Bruce Berndt, who graduated from Albion. My year, Bruce, 1961.
It was a great year.
It sure was.
Lifelong friends from 61. A lot of graduates that Albion should be proud of.
Well, I think so. And I know that for me, it seems like yesterday, and yet it seems a very long time ago when I do the math. And it was. Yeah. So you're at home and where right now?
So in Urbana, Illinois.
Okay. We'll get to the reason you're there in just a minute. You majored in mathematics at Albion.
Yes.
You ended up with a doctorate and a master's and spent a long time at the University of Illinois. But let's talk first about how you came to Albion College. I mentioned before we got started in this conversation that you and I are both from Berrien County, Michigan, the most southwesterly county in the state. I from Buchanan, Michigan. You from what, Stevensville?
Yes, I was actually born in St. Joseph and I went to high school in St. Joseph. Since Stevensville High School was very small, my parents wanted me to get a better education, so to speak. So we traveled 6 miles every day to St. Joseph High School.
You were from a farm family.
Right. Yep. Worked a lot of long summers on the farm, picking black raspberries, sour cherries, peaches, grapes.
For people that don't know, that western coast of our state is a great fruit belt, especially down in Berrien County. Yeah. So how did you come to go to Albion? I think you told me that you were the first in your immediate family to go to college, as was I.
Yes. So I went into my high school counselor one day and I said, I would like to go to a small college. And he said, well, the 2 best small colleges in Michigan were Kalamazoo and Albion. Well, I had been on the Kalamazoo campus a few times on the track team. I was a member of the track team at St. Joe for all 4 years. And I always thought Kalamazoo had a very ugly campus. So I decided, well, I perhaps should go to Albion. So I went to Albion on a visit, found that it was a nice looking campus and people seemed to be quite friendly. So I applied at Albion, and so this is how I got to Albion. I was born and raised in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and Valparaiso University is the prime university or college in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And I'll never forget the day during my senior year when I went into my 8th grade teacher. I should remark that for up through grade 7, I went to a country 2-room school. But then my parents wanting me to get, excuse me, a religious education, I went to Trinity Lutheran School in St. Joseph for 1 year. And well, anyway, getting back to my visit, I asked him to write a letter for me for Albion College, and I will never forget the look of disappointment on his face because he thought I would go to Valparaiso University.
Well, I was raised in the Methodist church down the road from the college in Jackson, Michigan. And really that had no real bearing on the reason I went to Albion. But I recall that fall of 1957 when you and I both ended up at Albion College as being just a gorgeous fall. The leaves were gorgeous. Everything about it was perfect. It was the perfect Indian summer. Is that just my memory or is that yours as well?
Well, I don't have any strong memories of the fall, but I know it was a very nice fall with little rain because I had actually become a manager of the football team. I had played football in high school and thought I would like to play football at Albion, but I had an injury from high school football that never healed. So I remember that it was a perfect fall, and I don't recall any rain at all, but all the days that I was on the football field as a manager were perfect days. But,
Head coach Morley Frazier.
yes. So as I mentioned earlier, I ran track in high school, and so Morley he thought people from Hillsdale College would spy on the team. So he had me always check out, suspicious looking characters around the football field. So one day I went up to this man and I sort of asked him what he was doing here. And he said, "I work here, son." And it was Ike Isaac.
Oh my gosh.
The track coach.
Yeah.
And so I told him I just done a few laps interceptor, and he says, "Well, it's a very good warm-up, son." And I thought it was, on my way to a good, practice, but he considered it a warm-up. So I knew right then and there that I would be working harder track than I did at high school. So, but Ike was an enormous influence on me. Really, he and Dr. Moore were the two really main influences of my life.
In what way? I was not an athlete, so my acquaintance with Elkin, Ike, Isaac, and Morley Frazier was in passing, and I didn't major in mathematics as you did. I was a history major. So tell me just exactly how did Ike Isaac influence you?
Right from the start, the character of an athlete was more performance, was better, or highly more valued than the performance. I suffered an injury my first year, and he was always very sympathetic. And he actually solicited doctors in Ann Arbor to actually look at my injury. And the values he preached for all 4 years there were constantly with me. And after graduation, my wife, Helen, who was in the class of '62, and I worked for him at the Friendly Pines camp in Arizona, where he was the director of the camp. And I'll never forget the values that he inculcated in the young kids at that camp. In other words, winning and was not, what life was all about, but how you performed in life so he and I had contact up until he passed away. And every year we had an Ike reunion. That is a number of the people that were influenced by Ike. All of us got together once a year with Ike, usually for more than one day. So he was a great influence on my life. And Roger Landrum, Bud Hudson, Will, Gail Hurst were some of the others that joined me every year with Ike in this reunion.
It is remarkable how Albion College and the people who were there have stayed with us for well over half a century now. Yeah. Most of them gone. Yeah. I remember going to visit Dr. Julian Rammelkamp of the history department. That was my department. And I would go without seeing him for a year or two, and we'd pick up right where we left off. It was that he came to my wedding, Bruce.
Oh, great.
He came to my wedding. Well, you decided you'd be a math major.
Yeah, I started off in physics, but I soon learned that there were people better than physics than I was. In particular, Roger Hooverman, who was my roommate, and Will Hurst.
Yeah.
And then I just, gradually dawned on me that I like mathematics better than physics anyway. So after 1 year in physics, I became a math major, but I continued to take all the physics courses I could. So.
And into your life now comes Dr. Keith Moore.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was a great influence on me, both mathematically and you know, as a role model. I had almost all of my mathematics courses from Dr. Moore. And one thing I liked about him was that he wasn't just a mathematician. He was the kind of person that I wanted to be. He liked classical music. He played the oboe. And I had not known of classical music until I got to Albion. But, you know, I don't know if you remember that at dinner at Seton Hall, they play classical music in the background. And, you know, so one of the first pieces that I loved to hear was Ravel's Bolero. And so, and then Helen played the violin. So these are two influences that got me greatly interested in classical music. And I still am, I listen to classical music daily. And so, you know, he was the kind of person that I wanted to be. And so I, you know, went to the University of Wisconsin with the intention of coming back to a small college, spending my career at a small college. But as you can see, I never got to a small college.
Yeah, I noticed that you left Albion, you went to Madison. You graduated from there. Your quest to be a mathematics professor. Didn't you studied abroad for a year?
Right. Well, it was actually a postdoctoral position for 1 year at the University of Glasgow. And I had interviewed at a couple small colleges before that, before I went to Glasgow. And I wasn't really 100% sold on either place. Yeah, they made offers to me. And so I was a little bit undecided. And in January of, so there would have been January of '67, I got an offer from the University of Illinois. And it completely surprised me. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go to the University of Illinois for a couple of years, and then after experience at a large university, I would, you know, go to a small college. I might indicate to you how I got this offer from Illinois.
Please.
So I had two major professors at the University of Wisconsin. They were by name Rod Smart and Marvin Knopp. And Marvin was actually a Ph.D. student of Paul Bateman, who was the head of the Department of Mathematics at the University of Illinois, and also a number theorist. So I am what's called a number theorist. My Ph.D. is in number theory. And so he wanted me to apply at the University of Illinois. So just out of, you know, respect for him, I decided I would apply to the University of Illinois. And that winter in January, the annual meeting of the American Mathematical Society was in Chicago. So I went down to the meeting, and Marvin introduced me to Paul Bateman. And then we all went to lunch. There were about 10 or 12 of us that went to lunch at a very expensive restaurant. And it was very expensive. And so I decided I would just order a hamburger. Well, at the end of the meal, Marvin Knopp said, well, this is too complicated to figure out. Let's just, you know, divide the bill equally. So I was really upset with him. Here I was, a poor graduate student, you know, trying to be economical. And here I was paying for the lunch of all these fancy professors, you know. So anyway, I didn't go off with a good feeling about the University of Illinois. But Marvin said, oh, you got to apply there. You got to, work in the department with Paul Bateman. And so I did. And I had forgotten about it until January at the University of Glasgow when I got this offer from the University of Illinois. So then I accepted it and thought I would just stay here for a couple of years.
And a half a century later.
Right. I still haven't gotten to a small college. Yeah.
52 years on the faculty.
Right.
At the University of Illinois. It's a long time.
Yeah, actually, I set a record. I'm the longest serving person in the Department of Mathematics at Illinois.
Really?
Yeah.
So over those years, you must have worked with some really interesting young people.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, I've had 37 PhD students, and most of them are my good friends. We keep up with each other. So
you retired what?
I retired then about a year and a half ago. Yeah.
And so I take it you're not just fishing or playing checkers. You're doing something. I bet you're still a mathematician at heart.
Oh, yeah, I still work on research, and as I indicated before you came up, I'm sort of been working on two book projects, and currently involved with a couple of research projects otherwise. So one of the projects is with a former postdoc that I had. She was my postdoc in 2000, 2003, and she's a professor at Penn State now. And so we're trying to get together on writing a book together. And,
we're talking, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Bruce Berndt, who is a classmate of mine, the class of 1961, Lord help us. It's a long time ago at Albion College, and recently retired from the University of Illinois. Bruce is doing research, and one of the things, Bruce, that you haven't mentioned, you're an amazingly modest guy for all you've achieved, I must say. You are one of the top 5, I think you're number 5. You've been named the 5th most influential mathematician in the world over the past 10 years.
Yeah, that's
How does that make you feel? That's a long way from Stevensville.
Yes, it was a huge surprise. I had forgotten about this agency that does these ratings. And so when a co-author of mine, another professor at Penn State, George Andrews, who was the same age as I am, we've been working with each other about 50 years. He sent me an email one day. It was actually forwarded to him by another mathematician, and it said I was the 5th most influential mathematician in the world. So I mean, it was a huge surprise. And if someone had told me I was in the top 1,000 influential mathematicians in the world, I would have been very proud and surprised then as well. I don't know how this was determined. I have written a lot of books, about 15, and edited another 15 or so books. And I've had 37 PhD students, which is about, I think, 3rd most ever at the University of Illinois in math. So I've had a fair amount of influence, and I'm fairly well known throughout the world for my work on Ramanujan, India's greatest mathematician. But I would have guessed that there are still thousands of mathematicians, that have been more influential than myself. So it was, a huge surprise. And,
what an honor! What an honor! What an honor for you! What an honor for our college!
Yeah.
And a couple small town boys like us.
Yeah. No,
that's very impressive.
Yeah. So.
Very impressive. I've read a couple things that you wrote getting ready for our conversation today, Bruce, because we haven't talked to each other in over, 60 years or something. you studied physics and mathematics at Albion, but I'm taking it from the things I've read that either in St. Joseph, Michigan, or in Stevensville, or in Albion, you learned a lot about the written word. You write really well.
Yeah. Well, I had very good teachers in English in both high school and college. So I know what a dangling participle is. All of my students know what dangling participles are. So, yeah, I've had I had very good training both high school and college.
It's so important. Our classmate, Harry Cook, whom you may remember.
Oh, yes.
Harry's gone now, passed away about 3 years ago, a little over that. And Harry and I became reacquainted probably 20 years, 15 years after college. And for the last many years of his life, Harry and I would have lunch every month or so together. And Harry and I had great fun picking apart other people's writing. Because like you, I had strong training in high school and then in Albion, as of course did Harry, who majored in English and became a scholar and a writer. It's interesting that the liberal arts education has carried us as far as it has. It's amazing to me.
So his wife, Gwendolyn Hetler,
right,
was a very good friend of Helen's. And so we didn't seen each other for years, but we've sent Christmas cards to each other every year. And so we know what Harry and Gwen were doing. And
yeah, Harry had an interesting career and did a lot of good in this world.
Right.
Well, such a pleasure to talk with you. So you're doing research now. I suspect you don't want to quit.
That's right.
And that's another part of the Albion background, isn't it? Our minds just keep going.
That's right. Yeah, maybe my wife Helen would prefer that I not be quite so devoted to mathematics, but anyway, she's now that she retired at the age of 70. She was raised, she was majored in foods and nutrition at Albion and was a hospital dietitian for many years. So after she retired, she's gone with me on several trips to various places in the world where I gave lectures. So, so she has benefited a little bit, you might say, by taking some trips with me. But,
well, it's been a good life. It's so good to see you after all these years and to learn about what you've been up to. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us. I have one last question I'd like to ask old timers like us.
Mm-hmm.
If a 17, 18-year-old college student, bright young person were to say to you, what advice do you have for me about choosing a college? What would you say?
I would say be sure to check in with the best small colleges in your area. And in fact, I have a granddaughter. Of my 3 children, one actually has been living in Champaign-Urbana. She's a hospital chaplain. And so her daughter is a junior in high school. And so I'm encouraging her to, check out small colleges. Her mother wants her to go to an Ivy League school, but I think, that might not be necessarily the best thing for her. So,
well, one of the things I've realized and finally admitted to myself after all these years is that I had been accepted at the University of Michigan and was planning to go there. And someday I'll tell you the story about how I ended up at Albion instead, for which I'm eternally grateful. But as I look back on it, knowing who I was at age 18, I don't think I'm not sure I'd have survived, let alone excelled at the University of Michigan or another big school. Albion was perfect for me, and I think it was for you as well.
Yes, I have exactly the same feeling. If I had gone to Michigan or Michigan State, I was sort of been lost. I, I came from a farm, and first 7 or 8 years of my life, I did not have a very good education. So I always felt I was a bit behind. And so at Albion, I think I had caught up a bit, and I wouldn't have caught up at a place like Michigan. I never would have gone on to get a PhD if I had graduated. No, never would have done that. So.
Well, as I tell people, Bruce, and you'll appreciate this because of your relationship with people like Ike Isaac and Dr. Keith Moore. If I had gone to Michigan, my history professor wouldn't have come to my wedding.
Well, I wouldn't have been getting together with my classmates and one of my professors every summer either.
Yeah. Bruce, thank you so much for being with us. You're a proud Briton, and we Britons are proud of you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for the interview, Ted. And
okay.
Hope to see you at Albion homecomings or sometime.
Once we have a homecoming, I'll be there and I'll look for you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bruce.
High on our list.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you all for joining us for this Briton conversation.